Today, I'm comparing tungsten versus lead sinkers when it comes to lure fishing. I will cover topics like presentation, including underwater testing, also pollution or toxicity, and lastly, price. So, all these advanced lure fishing techniques should help you to decide which type of sinkers will work the best in your own fishing. So yeah, stick around to find out more. So, as mentioned, I will cover these topics. Firstly, I will talk about materials themselves, that is lead and tungsten. And I'm making sure I'm writing everything down. Then the second topic will be presentation when it comes to fishing when using different types of jig heads and other sinkers. So, next will be toxicity and pollution. I'll make it shorter. And lastly, price. Okay, so as you can see on the table here, I have two types of sinkers for fishing: jig head or jig heads and teardrop weights. And they are more or less of the same weight. And you will notice right away that the difference in size is huge. So I can prove to you that the weights are different. I will grab my scales and we will quickly weight or take the weight of tungsten first. As you can see, 5 to 4 grams. And the lead, just 5 grams. And with the other ones, 5.45, very, very close, 5.38. And if I would compare the sizes, really, the difference really is huge. And the same applies to the jig heads as well. And really, there are no surprises in here because lead, right, has a, probably I'll write it somewhere here, the density 11 grams per square centimeter, and tungsten has 19 grams per square centimeter, meaning that the volume needed for the same weight for the tungsten weights will be almost twice as little, or lead weights will be twice as big for the same weight. Also, it's very important to mention that tungsten weights, and they advertise they are almost pure tungsten, that is 97% tungsten, so almost 100%, so very, very pure alloys. And when it comes to lead weights, they are not pure alloys at all. They are kind of compounds or mixtures, and lead percentage, as far as I know, is about 50%. The rest will be zinc and other materials, just to make sure that the lead weights are not toxic, but I will come to that toxicity element later. Also, we have to mention that lead weights are quite soft, because the material itself is very soft. Therefore, you can amend the weights if you need, especially jig heads. And if you would hit some like hard structure with a lead weight, it would change the shape a little bit as well on the impact. And this does not apply to tungsten weights at all, because tungsten is one of the kind of toughest metals we have on the planet. So it would not change the shape at all, no matter what you will hit with it. And this brings nicely onto another topic, and that's a presentation. So I performed some underwater testing, and really I could not see any difference when it comes to sinking rate. So both types of weights, that is lead or tungsten, look to me that they do sink at the same rates, whether it's just a plain jig head or jig head with a lure. Again, did not notice any difference. But there is a difference when it comes to feeling when the rig hits the deck, especially on the G-heads, I believe this will be to do with the hardness of the tungsten itself. So by this I mean when the rig with the lure hits the deck, like harder deck, sand, gravel, concrete and so on, you can feel that through the rod, like a proper ding. This does not apply with the lead at all. I mean here when you have kind of lightish weight and when you are casting far out with the same weight, usually you would not be able to feel the bottom as good as you can with the tungsten. That's a really good difference and good advantage for the tungsten weights. But when it comes to sinking rates, as I mentioned, I could not notice any difference at all. Another advantage for the tungsten weights obviously is the size. So when delicate presentation is needed and you want to get away with as little kind of elements around your rig as possible, tungsten will win every single time because their weights will be smaller. Almost twice as small, as simple as that. Especially this applies to those rigs where kind of weights are separated from the lure itself. Another topic I want to talk about is toxicity and pollution. Basically, there are some bad press or rumors flying around about lead weights being very kind of toxic. To my understanding, this relates to the fact that before, let's say 20-50 years ago, most lead weights used to be actually lead, almost pure lead, and they used to be toxic. As I mentioned, these days, lead weights do consist 50% of lead, give or take, and the rest metals used for the weights are those which kind of reduce the amount of toxicity that pure lead has. So, to my understanding, it's absolutely fine to touch the lead and to fish with it. And further, you see, lead melting point is 327 degrees Celsius, whereas tungsten melting point is 3000 to 2 degrees Celsius, meaning that over 10 times more heat you need to make the jighead, for example. In a nutshell, let's say if you would need to boil 1 kettle of water to make your tea or whatever, instead you are making over 10 kettles of boiling water. And as a result, it means that you are kind of producing over 10 times more heat and consuming 10 times more kind of fossils, or burning 10 times more fossils, unless you are using solar. But these days solar or renewable kind of electricity still is scarce around. So this means that if you are kind of losing lead weights in your own pond, obviously it will mean that you will be polluting that one point. But to make tungsten jighead, for example, is in general more pollutions or toxic to the planet Earth, as far as I can understand. And also, tungsten as a metal is kind of not very easily harvested because it's not like abundant in the ground. Therefore, it costs more to obtain it. So bottom line, when it comes to toxicity and pollution, to my understanding, really both are not very good. But if I would have to pick one which is kind of more toxic, I would say that it's tungsten, because it pollutes the earth, or it kind of warms the climate more than the lead does, because of simple fact that it needs 10 times more heat just to produce fishing weights. Okay, and lastly, let's move on to the last topic, and that's the price. And really it's simple, since tungsten is kind of almost precious metal, not many particles in the ground, and it's way more difficult to harvest because of that reason. Density of the material itself, it makes tungsten baits way more expensive. As of today, that is 2023, it's about 3 to 5 times more expensive than lead jigheads, for example. So, we talked about the price, we talked about toxicity, presentation, and materials. And yeah, let's make one final adjustment. So, if I will make a table, right, and I will kind of give points within each of those categories, we will see which one is better, obviously. So when it comes to materials, I prefer actually hard jigheads and overweights, and it seems that paint job is kind of sticking better onto the hard material. It seems that if you have painted lead jighead and if you would hit kind of big stone or like some concrete, it seems that the paint job just chips off. So I'm giving win here for the tungsten. Then when it comes to presentation, again, I'm giving pith for the tungsten because it's smaller and it gives me better feedback when the weight or my rig hits the bottom. Therefore, edge has the tungsten. Now when it comes to toxicity, again, I can't really prove it, but to my understanding, lead wins here. Because with the lead weights, if you will keep losing leads in one pond, let's say, you are polluting this one area. Tungsten weights do pollute globally more than the lead. And price obviously goes to the lead weights because they are cheaper. So as you can see, 2 versus 2. And really, I expect this result, having used both types of jigheads for and weights in general for a while. And really, I'm using both. I'm not saying that one is kind of miles better than the other. It's not the case. As always, results are complicated or comparisons are complicated. Very, very rarely you will find or will be able to say, oh yeah, that one is way better than the other. That's not the case at all in this comparison. But it will be it from me for today. I hope you have found this video useful. If you did, please consider subscribing to my channel and leaving thumbs up. But that's it. Thanks a lot and see you in the next one.